President, I move to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371.
Clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and further purposes.
Mr. President, we are 37 days into an entirely avoidable government shutdown. And I say avoidable, Mr. President, because it was. Democrats instigated this shutdown by rejecting a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution. Republicans weren't asking them to swallow a bunch of new conservative policies. There isn't a single partisan policy in the bill. And yet Democrats couldn't bring themselves to take yes for an answer. Democrats, of course, have claimed their decision to shut down the government's about health care. They want Republicans to bail out their Obamacare mess. And as I've said probably 1,000 times now, Mr. President, Republicans are 100% willing to sit down and talk about the mess that Democrats have created. We're just not going to have that conversation while Democrats are holding the federal government hostage. That was our position in September. That was our position in October. And yes, it's still our position in November. We're just waiting for Democrats to take yes for an answer. Mr. President, I do know that Democrats have been under a lot of pressure from the far left. The far left pushed them to shut down the government. And the far left has pushed them to keep it shut down. As one House Democrat told Axios yesterday, and I quote, "There would be hell to pay if Senate Democrats don't let events play out," end quote. There would be hell to pay if Senate Democrats don't let events play out. That quote from a House Democrat just yesterday. Well, Mr. President, what events need to play out? What more needs to happen for the far left to be satisfied? The pain this shutdown has caused is only getting worse. 40 million Americans who rely on food assistance programs are now at risk of going hungry without a resolution to the shutdown. I'm sure these Americans are doing everything in their power to feed their families, but they can't do that forever. Federal workers have now gone without pay for more than a month, including the people in this building. Will the far left not be satisfied until federal workers and military families are getting their Thanksgiving dinner from a food bank? Because that's where we're headed. And then, Mr. President, there's air travel. Yesterday, the Transportation Secretary announced that as a matter of safety, the Department of Transportation is requiring mandatory reduction in air traffic starting tomorrow because of shutdown staffing issues. That means widespread flight cancellations, supply chain issues, hundreds of thousands of passengers dealing with disruptions to travel every day. The impact this will have will be immense. And all of it because Democrats cannot bring themselves to accept a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution, something that happened 13 times when they had the majority and President Biden was in the White House. So I ask the question again, Mr. President, what more do Democrats need? They got their chairs at the left-wing No Kings rally. They kept their base satisfied through the fall campaigns and Election Day. And as of Tuesday, they have the extremely dubious honor of instigating the longest and most severe government shutdown in history. How much more do Americans have to endure before Democrats are satisfied? Mr. President, the Democrat leader said yesterday that every day gets better for Democrats. The number 2 Democrat in the House has said that the American people's suffering takes a back seat to Democrats' precious leverage. And the senior senator from Vermont, a leading voice on the left, wrote an op-ed over the weekend calling for Democrats to keep the government shut down forever, as far as I can tell. Mr. President, I hope that's not where most Democrats are. I hope at least a few Democrats can see that this can't go on any longer. People are suffering, and it's getting worse every day. A furloughed federal employee, a mother of 5 in Maryland, told the New York Times last week, and I quote, "I don't know how to get the mortgage paid," end quote. Federal workers are taking on second jobs to make ends meet. Food banks across the country are overwhelmed. And American families are looking to the holiday season with apprehension. Mr. President, Democrats have a choice to make. Are they going to continue to bow to pressure from voices on the far left telling them to keep up their opposition? Or are they going to stop the American people's suffering and end this shutdown? I hope enough of them are willing to do the right thing. And I hope they do it soon. The American people can't wait for events to play out. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Yes. I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
So, Mr. President, Americans plagued by high costs fired a political torpedo this week at Donald Trump and Republicans. They spoke loudly and clearly. We are fed up with the high cost of living. We're fed up with the tax on health care. We're fed up with your broken promises. And the question now is, will Donald Trump and Republicans listen to the American people? Will Republicans finally work with Democrats to reopen the federal government and negotiate a fix to the ACA premium crisis? Will Donald Trump finally take a break from his lavish ballrooms to help families who can't afford the rent, can't afford health care? The American people are waiting, and Democrats are ready. We want to have negotiations. It's been long enough. Look, if Republicans were smart, they would get the message after Tuesday that their do-nothing strategy isn't working. Even Donald Trump knows Americans hold Republicans responsible for this mess. Here's what he said. The shutdown was a big factor. He was talking about, why did you lose the election? He said the shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans. Again, Donald Trump's words. The shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans. That's what he said about the elections Tuesday. This is probably the smartest thing President Trump has said in a while. Donald Trump clearly is feeling pressure to bring the shutdown to an end. Well, I have good news for the president. Meet with Democrats, reopen the government, fix the ACA crisis. That's the best way to put this crisis behind us. And I will say something else about what happened on Tuesday. The single biggest worry Americans feel right now is the cost of living. If you could boil down the theme of Tuesday's elections down to one word, it was affordability. And Republicans absolutely whiffed on that by focusing on everything but affordability. In fact, Republicans have governed all year like drunken sailors. Instead of lowering costs, they plundered health care into oblivion. They've cut taxes for billionaires while kicking millions off health care. They've approved luxury jets for cabinet officials and acted as if there were zero consequences for their actions. After spending all year intoxicated on right-wing policies that do nothing to lower costs, Republicans shouldn't be surprised that Tuesday hit them like a bad hangover. And now that Tuesday is over, we're suddenly reading all these stories about how Donald Trump is finally going to start getting serious about messaging on affordability. One story said it's going to be the big focus for him next year. Wow. Where's this guy been? What fantasies is he living in? And are we supposed to applaud Donald Trump now that he's finally going to focus more on affordability? And he says on messaging, the American people want results, not a message that brings no results and produces no progress. Apparently, Donald Trump even said on Bret Baier's show that Republicans aren't doing a good job talking about affordability. No kidding. That would be putting it kindly after everything they did this summer to make life affordable to billionaires. So look, if Donald Trump really wants to get serious about affordability, here's a free tip. He should work with Democrats to actually make health care more affordable, not even say he wants to do something vacuously. We should extend the enhanced ACA premium credits, which Senate Republicans voted against 3 times. If Donald Trump has any interest in keeping his promise to lower costs, he should maybe focus more on fixing health care than sending billions to Argentina and trying to win a Nobel Prize. The American people have spoken. It's time Republicans finally listen and work with Democrats to bring this shutdown and health care crisis to an end. I yield the floor.
Another day in the longest U.S. government shutdown in history, and here's your headline at this hour. The Senate not currently scheduled to vote on a measure that so far has fell flat 14 times. So just yesterday, President Donald Trump put pressure on Republican senators at a breakfast meeting. He said, look, get the government reopened and scrap what is known as the filibuster. So what's that? That's the threshold that requires 60 votes to advance most legislation. Even Republicans say they don't have a stomach for that. Meanwhile, Americans are feeling the effects of the shutdown as they travel throughout the week. You are seeing what a lot of people are seeing when they go to airports. You saw that screen there, delayed, or canceled. Headaches are expected to only get worse for you as you travel tomorrow. The federal government plans to reduce airline traffic by 10% at 40 locations starting tomorrow. And we're talking about some of the most busy airports in the United States. FAA Administrator Brian Bedford says the reductions are driven by issues of fatigue that our flight controllers are experiencing. Regulators are focused on slowing traffic in specific markets, but not the whole country. So Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has warned Americans about the inconvenience this reduction will create.
We have seen staffing pressures throughout our airspace. Those who travel will see that we've had more delays. We've had more cancellations. I anticipate there will be additional disruptions. There will be frustration. We are working with the airlines. They're going to work with passengers. But in the end, our sole role is to make sure that we keep this airspace as safe as possible.
U.S. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy there explaining, but a lot of travelers may find this a bitter pill to swallow. CBS News reporter Karen Waugh joins me now from George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. Houston's, we understand, will be part of that major reduction in air traffic. So how are airlines getting passengers ready for tomorrow?
Hey, Reed, good to be with you. So the plan is to gradually ramp up to these cuts, starting with something like canceling 4% of flights tomorrow, Friday, ramping up a little bit more over the weekend, and then by next week, about 10% of flights will be canceled. So that's how they plan to slowly get from one place to another. But let's take a look at this misery map we have on your screen of the 40 busiest airports that will be impacted. It includes, yes, Houston, Bush is here, but other major hubs like Denver and Atlanta, all 3 airports servicing New York City and all 3 airports servicing Washington, D.C., those will be affected as well. The main goal of these cuts ultimately, as Trump officials say, is to alleviate pressure from the understaffed air traffic control workers who've been working without a paycheck since mid-October. And of course, not having enough air traffic controllers could mean safety concerns as more planes are taking off and coming in.
Right. I've heard reporting that United and American Airlines are trying to mitigate the harm to travelers as much as they can, in some cases offering refunds if people are eligible. But what are you hearing from the traveling public? I imagine people who are going out today know that coming back home is going to be a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, so people who are flying out today, they got lucky. You can see behind me, this is mostly no lines, pretty calm, pretty clear. But like you mentioned, coming back may be a different reality depending on what point we are in those airspace cuts. If they're coming back next week and they're among the 10% of flights that are canceled, that's of course not going to be good news. And depending on how long this goes on, the Thanksgiving holiday, one of the busiest travel times of the year, that's just right around the corner as well. And of course, people don't want to be delayed or canceled when it comes to getting to spend family time. So a lot up in the air right now. lucky travelers today, but that luck may run out by tomorrow.
Yeah, their return flights will be no fun. Thank you so much for showing us that map. That just shows us where those pain points are. Karen Hua, always good to talk to you. You have a good day.